The water cycle has been with humans since time immemorial. However, the system has been affected by the changes happening in the likes of climate change. While the water cycle generally provides sustenance for living organisms, some parts on their own can result in devastating effects that could impact livelihood, agriculture, and ecosystems. In terms of biodiversity, evaporation increases as temperature rises, and climate change makes the Earth's atmosphere warmer. Due to the warming atmosphere, excessive evaporation causes soil to dry out and in turn dries plants and crops. The loss of these plants due to excessive drought also entails the loss of various animals who depend on them to survive. The death of these herbivores and omnivores also affects the population of those that feed on them, including us humans. Droughts also give way to wildfires, because the dried out vegetation serves as fuel for fires to spread, and the low precipitation does nothing to help relieve these fires as well. Too much evaporation also means that there would be so much water that will be condensed and will soon be precipitated. This massive amount of water will cause heavy rainfalls and storm surges. One might think that these heavy rainfalls can help dry out soil, but these rains do not gently soak the soil. Instead, it pours violently and causes floods. The Philippines had its fair share of super typhoons for us to know how damaging these are. Typhoons do not just destroy means of livelihood, they kill tons of people, endanger animals, and destroy their natural environments. Now for food security, our past actions always come back to bite us one way or another. For centuries, we abused nature for the sake of having food on the table. Now, our food supply is threatened by the changes in the environment, specifically in the water cycle. As Upmanu Lal, director of the Columbia Water Center, has put it, climate change impacts are all essentially a water story. Due to global warming, we get a faster rate of evaporation. More water in the atmosphere means less water in the land. Thus, we experience drier conditions that cause plants and crops to wither. When all that water comes down, we get floodings, something detrimental to agriculture too. Aside from crops, we also lose livestock, which people often fail to save during flash floods. Moreover, there are fewer trees to hold down the water because of deforestation, so most water goes back to lakes and streams. However, the problem is that they carry with them toxic materials and sediments that harm fishes and aquatic living organisms. All of these affect humans because as there are lesser fishes to fry and lesser crops to harvest, our food supply is threatened.
Now let's talk about how the change in water cycle has affected humans' health. Evaporation and precipitation are the main processes affected by climate change. Some areas may experience heavier than average precipitation, which will lead to flooding. People are prone to experience injuries, infections, poisoning, infectious diseases, malnutrition, and more significant mental health problems during floods. Others may be prone to droughts, as the traditional location of rain belts and deserts shift in response to a changing climate. Drought causes shortage of drinking water and poor quality drinking water. Due to the lack of flowing water, natural water sources will become contaminated with other species of plants, making it very hard to filter. Rainwater will also be a useless source because of the lack of precipitation. Besides persons, droughts also affect the air quality, sanitation and hygiene, and food and nutrition. But if there's one thing that is the most affected by the disruption in the water cycle, it would be the water quality. Heavier precipitation increases the amount of runoff into rivers and lakes, washing sediments, nutrients, pollutants, trash, animal waste, and other materials into water supplies, making them unusable, unsafe, or in need of water treatment. Increased sun heat causes drought and sea level rise that leads to increased water salinity. When there is a rise in sea level, salt water moves into freshwater areas. It will move further upstream, and then fresh water will be removed from rivers and shallow aquifers for human use. Contamination in the water system increases when there are rapid dispersion and transport of waterborne pollutants during runoff. On the other hand, contaminants that infiltrate groundwater may take longer to be detected but eventually spread over large aquifer sections. This deterioration of water quality limits the further potential use of water, making it unfit for drinking and irrigation. Now that we know there are a lot of problems, what can we do as students to alleviate this? Well, we can help mitigate these environmental issues in ways that do not necessarily require significant effort. For instance, simply educating ourselves with the concepts, details, causes, and effects of such problems can already make a huge difference. This can allow us to understand how these issues came to be, to trace patterns, and eventually learn how to resolve them. Additionally, joining organizations and movements with the intention of upholding environmental preservation and conservation can be a worthwhile experience and endeavor. Actions such as recycling, opting for thrifted clothes instead of fast fashion, and reducing red meat intake can reduce our contribution to climate change. We also need to make big corporations be held accountable, for they're the major players in making climate change a reality. We can do this by joining protests to let our voices be heard. Most importantly, man's collective effort is needed for a significant change to happen, and being a role model for others may help in persuasion. As such, disseminating relevant information can persuade other people to make themselves knowledgeable about environmental crisis as well, and influence them to help in any way they can. That will be all. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.